Welcome back to the show. Joining us today is Russ Scala of Scala Precision Health, who has dedicated 15 years of his career to working with war veterans and accident victims with quadriplegia. Recently, there's been a paradigm shift in the treatment of paralysis, and Scala Precision Health is educating rehab centers around the country on these exciting developments in rehabilitation. Russ, thank you for joining us today.
How are you?
I am wonderful. I think this is a very important conversation, and I'm excited to dive right into it. I think it's exciting as well. I want to talk about how you even got to this point.
It's everything's an evolution, and I used to work with paralyzed patients back when I was a paramedic in auto accidents, and then I used to, go see them in the hospital and look at their therapies. That was in the 80s. I did a lot of advanced training. I did a lot of research starting 15 years ago on what can be done. And with the advent of stem cell, with the advent of CRISPR, Cas9, the genetic editing, a lot of advancements is going to be happening in real time for paralysis. They even put a brain chip in, and some quadriplegics are even walking. You could document those, on the internet. When you look at what the top 10 centers are doing in the United States from rehabilitation, it's pretty much the same treatment protocol, muscle stimulation. And what we did is we looked at and talked to the top 10 centers and then developed a program on areas that they weren't looking at. We know that paralysis or quadriplegics, because their metabolism is completely different, they are more susceptible to heart disease and diabetes.
Wow.
They have nutritional and hormonal deficiencies that a lot of people do not check for. So we called the top 10 centers over a period of 2 years. We interviewed paralysis patients. What are they doing? What are the influencers doing to help, with their therapy? And is there a way out? Because when somebody has an accident, not only are they paralyzed, but the family that has to take care of them, they become caregivers, and they also become patients at one level. So there's two clocks going on. The clock with the family doesn't know anything. They may buy into slick marketing. They don't know where to turn. They love their child, and the child or the teenager or the adult that's now can't move. That's a big trauma. So I knew if we looked at the brain chemistry, how do we maintain their attitude? What motivates them in the morning is all part of their treatment protocol.
Wow.
So how do we motivate somebody that just becomes paralyzed? What areas do we have to look at? What gets them out of bed in the morning? What's the rehab schedule? So what we do differently is we look at diet, nutrition, hormonal replacement therapy. We look at the intestinal tract. So the microbiome of a paralyzed patient needs 21 minerals, 13 vitamins, 8 amino acids, 9 amino acids, 2 essential fats. If they're not pulling that out of food, if their microbiome is out of balance, they're going to mine it from their own muscle tissue. So all the rehab that they're doing, they're going to lose muscle mass. And when they lose muscle mass, again, they're more susceptible to heart disease and diabetes. So we developed new blood work to look at. We developed, with the pharmacy I'm working with, new hormonal replacement therapy to maintain the muscle mass in paralyzed patients. So right now I know for sure that none of the centers are doing this, these rehab centers in the United States. So we're reaching out to a couple of them right now, and they're looking at what we're doing and they're helping us say this is where we need to go with this. A few years ago I talked to a couple of leading neurologists in Orlando, Dr. Ira Goodman, that's head of Compass Research, and Dr. Arnaldo Isa. These guys looked at what I was doing a long time ago and said their practice is too conservative for this, but they gave me a thumbs up to stay with it. And they've taken phone calls from me. Listen, the standard of care and medicine is broken. Every paralyzed patient is biochemically unique. You can't treat them all the same way. You got to dive in and look at them at the cellular level. You got to look at what mitochondria, how they create energy. This is the mitochondria. Mm-hmm. We get it from our mothers. And sometimes if the body has too much glucose and not enough fat, it could shut down the mitochondria. So we've got to understand that stress in a paralyzed patient can shut down the rehab process. So there's other indicators that we could measure now. If we measure IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor, we understand that the body can still develop muscle in a paralyzed patient, right? We could stimulate neurogenesis to stimulate the development of new brain tissue. So my feeling is if we ready the metabolism of a paralyzed patient for what's coming down the road, you know what I mean? Whether they're going to use the exoskeleton or they're using the treadmill to walk with the harness, or they're using electrical stimulation therapy, the nutrition, hormone replacement, and stem cell are going to come together, okay, along with the brain chip. And I think it's going to open up a lot of doors. And a lot of this research is coming out weekly right now. So
weekly?
Yeah, we want to. Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's moving rapidly.
Yeah, stem cell therapy, natural stem cells, mesenchymal stem cells that could differentiate or change into different tissues. That's going to be the future, right?
Yeah. And I'll say for me, and maybe this is my own ignorance, so pardon my ignorance, but I feel, I'm surprised even just hearing you speak. Sometimes you would think with someone who's been paralyzed, for example, with that it's just affecting them physically. You're not thinking about everything that's going on inside. You're talking about nutritional hormone replacements and metabolism, and the fact that those things are also affecting them necessarily.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, and again, you know, when we look at the top 10 centers in the United States, what can they be doing differently to add a little to help with the rehab process? Mm-hmm. So I've worked with professional athletes. I've worked with, you know, trauma victims,
war veterans.
You understand on a cellular level, if you could optimize the intestinal tract, the mitochondrial function, you could optimize the brain and the brain chemistry, right? And what I wanted to do with this is educate the families, because the families after an incident like this, all the families that I talk to, they're still in shock. A flashbulb went off in their face, and sometimes they get taken down the wrong road because they don't know the right questions to answer. And there's a lot of slick marketers out there that'll say, you know, we'll work this. This will work for your son, and they're there every day taking care of them, and they see the pain in their child's face, and it's overwhelming for the family as well. So when I look at a family or I talk to a family, I actually have two patients, the caregivers and the actual patient, that everybody looks at the physical, the physical work and the rehab in the in the patient that's paralyzed.
Where my mind was.
But nobody's thinking about how's he feeling day to day.
Yeah.
How's he being motivated? What's he doing? How well are his therapists interacting with him? There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. It's not just, you know, the snap of a finger. This is an overwhelming task to rehab somebody. And when we see what's being done out there and we offer these options, I believe this is going to be the future. At least, you know, I talk to neurologists and physical therapists, and I say, what do you think about this? They go, this is great. Who's doing it? And I go, nobody
We
yet.
are.
So, and again, I'm not saying we came up with something that nobody's thinking about. All I'm saying is if you understand how the physiology works, if you understand if a paralyzed patient has high blood sugar, it will shut down hormone production, which will shut down his rehab process.
Right.
So I see in the future paralyzed people wearing continuous glucose monitors. So when they eat a meal, they can see how high their blood sugar goes up.
And monitor that.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the next meal they eat, and if it doesn't rise, then that's a diet we want to stay with. Each paralyzed patient is biochemically unique. You can't use one treatment protocol for everybody. But what you can use is do the new blood work, educate the doctor. I could get the doctor on board on what they need to look for. So the rehab process really is going to be at 90%. You know, we want to make sure the rehab process is productive. You know what I mean? If somebody goes to rehab every day, but they're in muscle wasting, then it's defeating the process.
Absolutely.
Muscle wasting in a paralyzed patient is called sarcopenia, right? So we want to avoid that.
And with these top rehab centers you were speaking to, what was the reception as far as this type of research? And
well, I didn't explain to them what we were doing. I just called and I wanted to get some data on what they're doing.
And they're all pretty much doing the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. They have a lot of great marketing. They got a lot of great testimonials. It is the future, but what we want to do is take this to the next level. and I'll open source to this. I'll give this away to a paralyzed, to a rehab center so they could implement it with their patients.
Because it's about the patients for
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
clearly.
Right.
Amazing. So where do we hope, I know you said this is the future, how far in the future are we talking about? You said things are changing on a weekly basis even.
Yeah.
Like where do you see this going, 6 months from now, a year from now?
I think for some people this is going to be like landing on the moon. Yeah, that's how new it's going to be. With, like I said, with the advent of stem cell therapy, what they're doing in other countries, CRISPR, Cas9, the genetic editing, and then the hormonal replacement therapy, looking at the gut. That one facility is going to roll this out, and they're going to be the early adapters, or a blue ocean strategy that's going to take everyone to the next level.
Oh man. Well, I think you're going to be at the forefront of that with the research you're doing, and it's exciting to be able to hear all about this. Thank you so much, Russ, for being with us and sharing this information.
Yeah, thank you too. I appreciate it.
I'm sure it's really valuable to those watching. It's been valuable to me too as well.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Well, if you would like more information on Scala Precision Health, I want you to head over to the scalaprecisionhealth.com website and the Russ Scala YouTube channel, where a wealth of free knowledge awaits you. Thank you so much for watching.